Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Nessie's Dead. As always, we are your hosts, Spencer and Helen.
Hello.
Hello. So, you are bringing us back into crime coverage, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. So I will be taking us back to true crime tonight. And I know, and I really like this case that I found. And again, for some reason, you keep putting out some really good episodes. So I felt like I had to really bring my A game this time.
I'm like Selena Gomez, it comes naturally.
Yeah, lately
Is that
it
a
has
Selena
been.
Gomez song?
I have no idea.
I think it is.
I don't know.
Whatever.
But for today, I've got a case that's not only going to be true crime, it's also unsolved. It involves the occult, the early satanic panic of the 1970s. And it's actually considered the first case of satanic panic. It also has corrupt police and media.
Of course.
And a possible connection to the serial killer, Richard Cottingham. Do you have any idea what case this is?
No, and I don't know that serial killer. Do I?
The torso killer.
Oh,
yeah. Oh. So, no idea?
No.
All right. So today we'll be covering the bizarre murder case of Jeannette DePalma.
DePalma? Where is this? Where is this located? Midwest?
New Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah,
I don't know it.
Oh, okay. So are we going to take the plunge?
Yeah, I'm ready to plunge into it.
All right. So we're going to start off. Jeannette, she was born on August 3rd, 1956 in Jersey City, New Jersey, to parents Salvador and Florence DePalma. She was the seventh child of 8 siblings, so very large Italian family.
Oh, they're Italian.
Mm-hmm. Now, the family settled in Springfield, New Jersey. They lived in a very tight-knit part of town known as Springfield Top. The neighborhood that they were in, everyone was very close. It was the type of neighborhood where you would have that network of neighbors that all gossiped and communicated to each other. However, the DePalma family didn't quite fit into this neighborhood, into this community. They were actually known for being quite strange, and the neighborhood thought of them as having very strange behavior just because they said they rarely left the house. When they did, they didn't really talk to their neighbors.
So you?
Yeah, me. They were also known to get into family fights consistently, and the neighbors would sometimes have to repeatedly call the cops on these arguments. And when they would get there, the wife would just be like, no, everything's fine. They would go about their ways. Now, there was also some rumors that Salvador was involved in the mafia, but this is never confirmed, so I didn't dive too deep into this.
That maybe just simply came about because they were Italian and it was in the tri-state area.
Possibly.
But I mean, he could have had ties. I don't know. But I feel like a lot of people kind of are like, oh, you're Italian, you're in Jersey.
Yeah.
You must be a part of the mafia.
Yeah. Now, the family used to be Roman Catholic, but at this time they had switched to evangelistic, and they actually went to the same chain or denomination of churches that I grew up in, which is the Assemblies of God Church.
Oh.
So
cannot relate.
At this time, Jeannette was a sophomore in high school, and she had a good group of friends. Now, there are two polar opposite stories of what kind of teenage girl Jeannette was. Some say that she was a very devoted Christian and that she was all about spreading the word of God to others and that she took her faith very seriously. Other side of the story, and I just kind of got both aspects depending on who was telling this. So it was hard to kind of see who was right and who was wrong. So I'm just going to include both.
Okay.
The other side of the story is that Jeannette was known in the community as being a wild child, which for that time period in the 1970s were usually meant that she was hanging around with boys. Maybe she smoked. Maybe she used some mild drugs such as marijuana. And some of the other teens would even say that she was known for being promiscuous around town. Even local police referred to her as a party girl. due to the fact that she was caught once in the back of a car with a boy. However, her good friend would say that that wasn't true and that that statement was actually false. So, kind of a blur on what kind of person she was when it comes to that aspect. But her friends did describe her as sweet and funny, said that she wasn't really that wild. Sure, she would sneak out, sometimes smoke if she was at a party, but she did rarely drink. They described her as reserved. She didn't talk too much. And I did see an account that before her death, Jeannette was starting to tell people, her close friends to her, that she wanted to start devoting her life to Christ and to the church more. So there could be truth to both sides of those stories, just kind of depending where she was at in that year. Maybe she was a party girl, then maybe she did start focusing. So maybe it is the same story. We're just kind of hearing it from different, maybe in the spring she was bad and by the fall she was good. You know what I mean?
Kind of spliced up.
Yeah. The day of her disappearance is pretty vague. There isn't too much about her last day that we know of. And there's several different theories about this day's occurrences. According to Jeannette's cousin, the morning of her disappearance seemed pretty normal. Her cousin Lisa at the time had actually run away and was missing out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, this morning of Jeannette's disappearance, her parents decided to inform her of her cousin's disappearance. And this really upset Jeannette because this information had been hidden from her for an entire month.
Oh, wow. Okay. So her cousin has been missing for a month.
She ran away.
She does not know at the time. And the day that she finds out is the day she goes missing?
Correct. Now, her cousin was known for running away, but she wouldn't stay gone that long. She would typically return. So now, once Jeannette got this news, of course, she's upset. She goes back to her room. And she calls her friend, Gail Donahue, to cancel their plans. They were supposed to meet up at a park. They were supposed to meet 2 other guys that day and hang out. But Jeannette said she couldn't make it because her mother was having her scrub floors all day.
Okay.
But Gail guilt-tripped her during the conversation, and Jeannette agreed to still come over to her house and said that she would think of some excuse and just hitchhike over there. And her friends would say that she was known for hitchhiking with anyone she knew, so it wouldn't be her first time doing this. After the phone call, she asked her sister Cindy if she wanted to join her to hang out with Gail and the guys, but Cindy declined, saying that she needed to wait for a phone call from her boyfriend since they had been in a fight earlier that day. Jeannette told her parents that she had to go into work for her shift at Brooks department store later that night. But the police and press would discover later that she never actually worked at this department store, so it seemed to be something that she would use as an excuse so that her parents would allow her to go out. Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of like bad girl energy.
It does give that vibe. Yeah, it definitely does. But before she left, she called one more friend and invited them along, but their mother said no, they couldn't go. Jeannette then tells her mom she's off to the Summit station to catch her shift. But actually, she starts going on this hitchhike to Gail's house. And on August 7th, she left her home and started that 8-mile hike. After she left, there isn't much detail of what happened. We know she did stop at another friend's house, Donna's, on the way, as Donna often was known for throwing parties at her house. There's nothing to confirm that there was even a party at Donna's that night. But after the disappearance, rumors began circulating that Jeannette possibly OD'd at the party, and maybe the party people had hidden the body.
Okay.
As the evening went by, it started to get late. Her parents were growing concerned because it wasn't like Jeannette not to give them a call if she was running late. So her parents started calling around to see if anyone had seen her or if she was at anybody else's house, but no one had any information on Jeannette's whereabouts. At this point, they went ahead and called the Springfield Police Department. Now, the police department, as they do, pulled the "they can't do anything until she's been missing for 24 hours" card.
Okay.
Hate that. And there's also conflicting stories on how the report was filed. The police say they weren't taking it seriously because the DePalmers said she ran away, but the family claims that is not what they said, and that they explained she did not come home from work and that she did not run away. Now, with that neighborhood, like I said, it was, of course, rumors began spreading and gossip very quickly that she had indeed just run away.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be too long until we would discover some devastating news. On the morning of September 19th, 1972, Officer Donald Schwartz began his morning like always, walking down to the department and starting his morning patrol of the neighborhoods. That day, he was assigned to the south side of the township. While on his drive, he does note that he noticed a dog carrying something in its mouth and moving through the trees near the quarry. This dog was heading back home to an apartment complex on Wilson Road. By a rear entrance, the dog dropped his findings and went back to his owner, who was unloading groceries from the car. Now, again, this is the part where some people say that the dog's owner found the object. Some people say it was the superintendent. I got more of the superintendent, so we're going to go with that. So it would be here that the superintendent of the complex would be making her rounds and made the shocking discovery of what the dog had left behind. It was a human arm.
An arm?
An arm. Now, at this point, the superintendent instantly called the police. Schwartz received the call. Now, at first, he thought this was probably just a prank, as she had been known to report kids from the complex harassing her, trashing the area. He assumed it was probably just a mannequin with ketchup or something, and it was a prank. So he is the first on the scene, and he quickly realizes, as he's looking down at the grass, that this was indeed human.
Ugh.
He got
Can
out
you
his...
imagine stumbling on a human arm?
Can you imagine that's what your dog brings?
Oh, that's scarier.
Yeah. I would never be able to let my dog, kiss me in the face.
No, my dog wouldn't be allowed inside.
Well, then he'd be bringing all sorts of body parts if you just leave him outside. He's already done it once. He's got a thirst for blood now.
Oh, you gotta get a friend.
But anyways, Schwartz got his camera out and proceeded to take pictures and called for additional officers to make their way out to the scene. Instantly, a search party was sent out to find where this arm could have come from. Schwartz joined the search party after his shift and continued to try to solve where this could have been. And it was on this search that he would make a gruesome discovery. In the quarry out by Interstate 8, he found the upper portion of the arm that was found earlier that day. And it was this conclusion that this probably fell off while the dog was returning home with the arm, which would mean the body was probably not far. The officers began to sweep the area. Now, this was not an easy place to search. It was covered in thick bushes and brush and was very difficult terrain. They were even using machetes to try and cut their way through this area.
Wow, like jungle.
Yeah. Schwartz and fellow detectives approached a cliff that looked over the quarry floor. This area was known as the Devil's Teeth. The two would ascend this extremely difficult, dense, and steep hill. Schwartz was the first on the top of the mountain, and he discovered the body of Jeannette, laying face down on a flat at the very bottom of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Her skin was greenish-brown. She was wearing a blue t-shirt and pants. There were no socks and no shoes. There were flip-flops found close to the body. And the contents of a purse were scattered near, but no wallet, money, and a cross that she always wore was also nowhere to be found.
Okay.
The body was hard to identify at this point. Animals had started to do what animals do and eat the body around the face and feet and ankles. Now, supposedly, above the head was a wooden cross made out of 2 sticks, a semicircle of stones, almost in the shape of a halo, and the body was laying in the middle of some logs that resembled maybe an altar or a coffin shape.
Wow. Now, was that confirmed or was that
weird? We'll get there.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, we're going to cover it. Instantly, the officer with him says, "This looks like witchcraft." There was rumor of decaying animals around the area and said to have been red arrows carved into the trees or painted onto the trees that were pointing to the body.
Wait, arrows pointing to it?
Yes.
That's really creepy.
Yeah, very creepy.
Can you imagine you're out on a walk in the woods. First of all, that's scary.
Yeah.
Um,
I was
and
like, no, I cannot
yeah, I
imagine.
don't, yeah, I don't think you're doing that. But
No.
like you see an arrow on a tree pointing, and you're like, oh, what's over there? And it points to another arrow, and then all of a sudden you stumble upon a body
Yeah.
with all of this stuff happening around it. That's
I would
really creepy.
I would run. I would get out of there as fast as
I would
possible.
too.
Now, they did search the area for more evidence, but nothing was found. The body was then lifted and brought down by an 85-foot fire truck ladder from the cliffside. It would have just, with the terrain and everything, it would have been too difficult to try to get the body back up, like I said, since it was so dense. But that also gives the speculation and curiosity to how did it get down there in the first place? Did it
Yeah, that's what
even?
I was just thinking. It's so difficult. They had to use
Mhm.
machetes, the cops or
And
whatever.
yeah, and
What
a
is this girl
ladder.
doing down there?
So it kind of makes you wonder if it happened in that location or was the body put there afterwards. It's really hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So the body was sent to the coroner, where Jeannette's family dentist would then arrive to make the determination that this was indeed Jeannette DePalma.
Mm.
The body itself had no markings indicating bullet wounds, stab wounds, or even a blunt force trauma. The toxology report stated no drugs or alcohol, but an unusual amount of lead was found in her body.
Lead?
Lead.
Okay.
They then sent the body to a local hospital to make sure they hadn't missed any details, and the hospital concluded the same results as well. The coroner, Dr. Edingberg, at the Sullivan Funeral Home, was in charge of handling Jeannette's autopsy. And he didn't have a very good reputation and was actually known to have botched several autopsies.
That, I understand police corruption. Not that I agree with it, but I'm like, okay, that when it comes to police, there is a sense of politics to it a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times there are a lot of those police officers that use their power to get away with doing things. Now, I never understand these cases that have a coroner who is also that way and botching autopsies. There are so many cases that I'm sure that we've covered or that we have listened to and know about where the coroner doesn't ever even perform the autopsy, or like they don't get to it for several months and they lie about it and the family finds out the real stuff, and it's crazy. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
I don't get that.
It doesn't make much sense to me. So the statements that were made about Edingberg was actually made by Ed Quiche, which is a local officer, and he's also known for making up shit. He was actually the officer that initially said the call was reported a runaway, but the officer would state that, quote, Edingberg was not a trained pathologist. The guy was a physician, and he got his position by political appointment, and that he was not competent enough to conduct forensic autopsies, and stated that he knew for a fact he butchered the autopsy of another high-profile murder victim, end quote.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we're starting off with this so far. It's
Gotcha.
not looking good.
No.
So Edingberg again reviewed the body, and since he couldn't find any cause of death, he just assumed possibly strangulation. But
What?
he doesn't have any evidence of this, but he's just going to say it was strangulation.
Of all things to assume, strangulation, there are very clear signs of strangulation.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible for there not to be a clear sign of strangulation if that is the cause of death. Of all things, that is crazy.
Yeah, that's what he said. And this conclusion was eventually, of course, leaked to the media, and the community was now under the assumption that she was the victim of a homicide.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kish would go on to say, quote, Edingberg never came up with the specific cause of death. There are rumors as far as any that is concerned. Edingberg could have not possibly determined that she was strangled or that she was beaten or shot. There were things that I believe were not able to be proven by the pathological examination. So what we had was a suspicious death because of where the body was ultimately located, end quote. After the autopsy was complete, Jeannette's clothing was packed up, and sent back to the Springfield Police Department. What they did with the evidence is absolutely crazy, and it makes no sense at all. They took the clothes and hung them up outside over a large AC unit on the side of the building for 4 days.
Why?
No reason.
First of all, it's evidence.
Yeah.
So there's that, the very obvious point of like it should be sealed up, boxed up, and placed somewhere secure and tested for
Exactly.
etc. And why is it outside at all? And why is it laid out for several days? And why on top of an AC unit?
Now, Peter Hammer, a retired Springfield lieutenant, recalled this unprofessionalism with a laugh, saying, quote, "You were lucky if half of us could read or write back then, to be honest." We've got winners here. This police department, the coroner. It's baffling.
Yeah.
That these people have this job. This is what they do for a living.
We could be cops.
I could be a coroner. Now, the contaminated clothing and items from the purse were eventually boxed up and sent to a crime lab for further forensic testing, but they would not be able to discover anything else on the clothes or any additional details. Gee, I wonder why. They did find stains on our clothing, but the clothing was too degraded to do any testing to verify if it was blood or semen. And also, this is the 1970s, so there was that lack of forensic technology.
I was just sitting here thinking, how can they not test that? But that makes sense. Yeah.
Also, they were left outside for 4 days, hanging over an AC unit on the side of a building.
That too. Well, and they were already outside for what, like 2 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I was reading this, I was like, this cannot be true. I just kept fact checking that because I was like, that's absolutely no way. But yes.
That's honestly, this is one of the more botched cases I'm familiar with now.
Now it gets worse. So,
okay.
During the investigation, the press makes its way in and gets a hold of this information about strange witchcraft-looking arrangements found around the body. This sparked rumors and speculations about Satanism and witchcraft as a possible involvement in the crime. On September 19th, 1972, an article appeared in the Elizabeth Daily Journals entitled "Girl Sacrificed in Witch Riot," which made the following claims that the investigation was looking into involvement with black magic and witchcraft based on the death scene photos, and that authorities believed the death could have been in the nature of a sacrifice, claiming that the wood around her body at the scene was now being determined to be symbols and that they could be due to the occult or to occult members in that part of her death. This article was the first publication made that would link her death with Satanism and witchcraft, which instantly caused panic to spread. This was a Bible community, and a lot of people began locking their doors for the first time. It's believed that this concern came from a crime that had occurred 9 months prior to Jeannette's death.
Oh?
Yeah, so we've got John List. He's a 46-year-old accountant, had made national headlines after he murdered his entire family and completely vanished.
Wow. He was never caught?
He eventually was caught.
Oh, but at the time he would have still been free?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, this occurred in nearby Westfield in a very large 19-room Victorian mansion known 19 rooms. Yeah, he had 19 rooms.
That was his house?
That was his house. It was known as Breeze Knoll. And this was 3 miles from the DePalma's residence, so not that far. John had become jobless for months at the time, and he actually hid this and would just get up and get dressed, act like he was going to work, where he would then go down to the bus station, sit and read, and then return home in the evening as if he'd been at work all day.
He just read at the bus station?
Yeah.
That's very similar to her.
Who?
To Jeannette.
Oh, the fact that she was lying that she was going to a job.
I mean, she wasn't reading at the book station, I assume, but at the bus station, but it is very kind of weird correlation there.
That is weird.
Not saying it means anything, but just odd.
That is odd. Now, also at this time, his wife was extremely ill. She had gotten syphilis and she had basically gone blind and she was bedridden. John was also dealing with concerns of his oldest daughter, who was becoming obsessed with the occult. John was a very Christian man. He did not like this at all. His daughter began identifying as a witch, using Ouija boards, and actually telling her peers and teachers that she was part of a local covet of witches that practice Satanism. And there were rumors of a secret altar located somewhere in the Westfield in addition to all of this.
Okay.
Now, Patricia, the daughter, she was concerned that her father was going to kill the entire family. I don't know why or what led to that. I'm sure there was something that was going on in that home that, of course, gave her the speculation. Maybe he said something. Maybe he made a threat. She did tell her drama teacher at the school, and she had even asked her drama teacher if he could come by that evening and talk to her father, kind of talk him down. Unfortunately, the drama teacher was not able to stop by that night. And that night, on November 9th, 1972, John would shoot his entire family in the back of the head and drag them to the ballroom, except for his mother, which he said she was too heavy. Now, we know this because John had left very long, lengthy letters in details at the scene of the crime for the police. The letters talked about how he could no longer support his family, and he was worried about Patricia becoming involved in the occult and was worried she would leave her Christian values and that his wife was too sick to attend church, which then he goes to say he was worried that this would affect the other two kids and make them lose their Christianity.
So he used his Christian values to then murder them.
Yeah, to kill them all. Now, like I said, he did vanish, but he was found in 1989 in Colorado and died in prison in 2008. But like I said, at the time, this guy was missing and had upped and vanished. So this also led to the thought that the covenant of teenage witches that Patricia spoke about could possibly be responsible for the murder of Jeannette. So we've got a ton of rumors going around here. And we also had, months before the List case, Patrick Michael Newell had been killed by two of his friends who bound him and threw him in a sand pit and watched him drown.
Oh, wow.
That sounds horrific.
This is all in the same area?
Yes. Now,
What kind of town is that?
This is wild stuff going on in Jersey in the 70s, I'm guessing.
My God.
Now,
that's actually like what they did to potential witches during the Salem witch trials.
oh, that is true.
I mean, not quite exactly the same, but I mean, it was the same. They would bind them and then toss them into the river.
Yeah.
And if they survived, it was a witch. So that's interesting. I wonder if there was something to that, considering
There was.
that they. Oh,
There was. Now,
they
one of
thought
the
he was
friends.
a witch.
No. Now, one of the friends said that they believed Patrick was involved in a Satan worshiping set and that he felt he had to die violently to be in charge of a legion of 40 demons.
Oh, wait. So he wanted his
Yes,
friends to kill him
exactly.
so that he could then go to hell and rule?
Yes, rule 40 demons.
Okay, so it's not anywhere close. There's like something occult oriented, but it's not what I thought.
Yeah.
It's not like pilgrims going after witches. It's
No.
like witches going after witches to
Yeah.
help the witch.
Witches, yeah. Now,
Wow.
their case led to investigators looking into what they called a voodoo cult in the area.
I'm sure it was not voodoo, but okay.
No, that's very different than voodoo. But
yeah, we know voodoo here on
we know
our
voodoo.
show. We know voodoo.
Maybe not New Jersey Police Department, but we do.
Jersey voodoo.
Jersey voodoo. This led the media, of course, into creating an atmosphere of fear within New Jersey and a fear of cults, witches, and the devil. The media just ran wild with speculation saying there were connections, that the bodies in the List home were laid the exact way that Jeannette was, and that the symbols at Jeannette's crime scene were similar to the ones that they found at the List residence crime scene. They also speculated that teenage satanic worshipers were responsible for Jeannette's death and that the police were actively investigating into black witchcraft and Satan worship because those were definitely involved.
They're not even like, wow, it could be that. They were like, that is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the community was assuming the worst, that this was an occult that was in their neighborhood somewhere.
Literally satanic panic.
Yes. Now, occult experts say that the items arranged that were claimed to be arranged the body, while strange, they were not satanic, Wiccan, or of any sort of witchcraft. Professor of history, Dr. Corey, a renowned expert in the field of witchcraft, which, how awesome. At the
Yeah, I
college,
think I'm changing my career path.
right?
Like, that's literally what I want to do. That's literally all I care to do is that.
Renowned expert in witchcraft. He was at the College of Charleston, said this seemed to be a media sensationalism, which I think so too. As the early 70s was a time where the media concerned with the hippie cults, and they were jumping in on this to really sell papers in the midst of all the concerns during the era. You had movies like The Exorcism, The Manson Family, and the media was just paranoid that crimes during this time had possibly connections to the occult and dark magics, even if there was little to no evidence of that correlation.
Now, was that professor referring to the supposed occult items found at Jeannette's body?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what he was speaking of. Now, of course, local Reverend James Tate, he's no help with all of this frenzy.
I'm assuming not.
He ran with this. He relished in the media attention, adding to the theories that he's hearing from police and the press. He was convinced this was the work of Satan. And of course, his congregation was on board with him and what he was saying. And of course, this gained him popularity and more people came to his church, making him somewhat of a local celebrity during this time.
Okay.
And on September, you're like, oh, of course he did.
I hate him.
We've got some theories about this too. We'll get into.
Okay.
On September 30th, 1972, police decide it would be a good idea to bring in what they thought was a real witch to the crime scene at the top of Devil's Teeth. But she was just actually a local school teacher who just wanted some of the spotlight. But they wanted her to examine the area around the occult symbols. Nothing came of this other than more hysteria. And mostly this freaked out Florence, Jeanette's mom. At the time, Florence fully believed in this occult theory, and it didn't help matters being that James Tate was her reverend.
Oh.
Yeah, she was even convinced this witch was going to bring her daughter back in a demon form.
Oh.
Yeah. The police were also getting calls in of people reporting animal sacrifices that were happening near or around the area. And the Reverend jumped on his bandwagon as well, claiming that there was definitely an occult there and that everyone should protect themselves by coming to his church.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Rumors began at the high school that there was, in fact, a cult, and their name was the Witches. Very clever name there.
Yeah. What?
The Witches.
If we're forming a coven or anything, and you say we're calling it the Witches, I'm
the
out.
Witches. You're like, this is the lamest group of people ever.
That's like getting a dog and being like, puppy.
Kitty, kitty. Now, of course, with all this hysteria, nothing is being solved in Jeanette's case. This is a media circus.
Yeah, poor Jeannette.
Yeah. And in October of 1972, Terry Rickle went to the police claiming he knew who had killed Jeanette. He stated it was a strange man living in the woods named Red. He described Red as a man in his 30s, was tall, fit, with wildish red hair, a full beard, and he was kind of that weird-looking old hippie type. And supposedly he lived in the woods right by where Jeanette's body was found. Now, Red was working at a golf club as a caddy at the time. And so since it was golf season, he would have been working and living in the area. So he became finally a suspect outside of this whole occult clamor that we have. The police started investigating Red and went down to Mountain View Road to find him. They found his makeshift shack 50 yards from where she was found. They found all of his stuff was there. And so they decided to go on a hunt to find him. Once they did locate Red, they took him in for questioning, but he was cleared and set free and vanished. The police concluded that since their lives didn't really link in any way, he didn't do it. So they just cleared him.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to get more into this, but
no,
50
that's
yards
it with
away.
him. They let him go. He vanished.
I think it's him. It's him.
He just left.
So he gets questioned.
Mhm.
First of all, he's living 50 yards away from where her body is found.
In a shack.
In a shack. He then gets brought in for questioning, and because he doesn't it doesn't seem to fit what they're looking for. It's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, you're not the guy. And then he disappears.
Yeah, he vanished.
To me, that sounds like a guy who killed someone and got away with it and was smart by dipping out.
Perhaps.
I mean, we'll get into theories, of course, but
yeah, we've got a couple other people to look at here. But the case continued due to another murder that took place within 8 days of Jeannette's murder. This town sounds like I wouldn't live here. It sounds like a lot of people are dying here. I don't understand.
About a week after she
was murdered.
Found? Oh. So
8
she would
days
have been
after
murdered.
Jeannette's murder. Yeah. Joan Kramer. Now, Joan had gone to a party with her family and her boyfriend. During this party, there were some disagreements occurring between Joan and her boyfriend, and Joan left the party. She walked 1.5 miles to the downtown area where she used the phone booth to call her friend in New York.
Kind of far.
And then she called her parents to tell them that she was heading home and she would catch a taxi. After the call, she ends up hitchhiking instead of calling that taxi. On the corner of South Orange Avenue and Sloane Street, she hitched that ride and was never seen alive again. On August 28th, 1972, 13 days later, she was found 6 miles from where Jeannette had been found. Joan's cause of death was found to be strangulation, but again, if it's the same corner,
yeah, I'm gonna go with probably not strangled, just because of the fact of what you brought up with the coroner already with Jeannette's case.
Yeah. Now, both were found laying face down. Both were attractive brunettes with a middle part. But police at the time did not put the pieces of the puzzle together. They were like these.
Of course not.
No, they don't correlate at all.
That sounds like a serial killer MO.
Mm-hmm. But later, a former Sunday school teacher and father of 5, Otto Nelso, was identified as the person who picked up Joan while she was hitchhiking. He was arrested and tried, but the jury could not decide for certain without a shadow of a doubt that he was the person that killed Joan, so he was released. And a short time later, Nelson was committed to a psychiatric hospital where he did take his own life in 1992. But even though Joan and Jeannette's death, they both have J names too, were oddly similar, there was no connection made even during the trial. Nobody brought this up.
But it
it's very similar. And
they
the
seem
same
very connected.
Yes.
But if they can't connect this guy to Jeannette, which maybe they just didn't have the evidence, I don't know. It sounds odd that he's tried for murder. There are 2 women who are murdered, and they're very similar circumstances, similar area, and he then ends up in a psych ward and takes his own life.
Well, he didn't take his life until 1992, so that's...
Oh.
Yeah, that might have just been him actually being crazy.
But, or maybe, well, I don't know. Okay, we'll get into theories.
We will. Now, with all the media attention to witches, the pastor claims the idea of a teenage coven of witches and Satanism being behind the killing. And this, again, started becoming widely accepted by the community. So now we've moved into a teenage coven of witches running around killing people.
Okay.
And in November 1981, after years of frustration with the police department, Jeannette's mother, Florence, decides to hire a private investigator. However...
Wow, it took 9 years.
I know. I think that would have been the first thing I did with the way... But I feel like she was so wrapped up also in this hysteria.
Yeah, I think she was easily convinced. I mean, her reverend in her church, which is supposed to be like a beacon of hope, had her convinced otherwise that it wasn't something. Yeah, I agree. I think she was just kind of trapped in the fire of it all.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe she came to her senses. I don't know. However, with this private investigator, all attempts to gain information from them were rejected or ignored. So they weren't able to get any information. And over the years, any attempts to review crime scene photos or evidence was shut down.
By the cops?
Yes.
That's always a good sign.
In 1995, the Springfield Police Department claimed that all the records prior to 1995 had been destroyed due to the flooding of Hurricane Floyd, which the DePalmas speculated could also have been a cover-up made by police. So now there's no evidence at all, supposedly. Eventually, Jeannette's case turned cold until two journalists began investigating it in the late 1990s and made some discoveries that could completely change everything that we know about this case and pretty much everything that we've been discussing.
Oh?
Yes. In 1997, the editors of Weird New Jersey, Jesse Pollock and Mark Moran, received a letter from a fan named Billy Martin. In it, Billy told them about the case of the dog discovering the human arm. He went into detail in this letter as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse and Mark found the information intriguing and wanted to look into it more. But however, this was the area that predated online resources, so they really struggled to find any details. Regardless, thinking their audience would find it interesting, they published Billy's letter in their magazine. To their surprise, the publication sparked a strong reaction to many of their readers who had grown up in Union County in the 1970s and replied to them that the story they were looking for was Jeannette DePalma's. Now knowing the name, they soon uncovered the details about the case. Yet, despite the many years that had passed since Jeannette's death, when the pair attempted to interview locals, they found that the fear of what had happened was still relevant, and no one wanted to go on record about the case. There was still a strong belief that the case was due to occult practices and that the police had maybe covered it up. And
that makes sense, because that was still a really major fear of people, specifically in small towns in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because like the prime era of satanic panic was the 80s and into the early 90s. And I mean, we still have it to this day.
I don't feel like it's as big.
No, not yet. But also they go for, it's like Taylor Swift now. I'm like, come on.
Oh, I know. I'm like, give me a break. Find somebody a little cooler. Let's go.
Yeah.
Anyways, so there was still fear that this person was out there and locals didn't want to bring attention back on to the case. So with no one willing to help and the police refusing to help them, still claiming all the records had been lost, it seemed impossible to look into. They did, however, receive a number of anonymous letters filled with details. One even telling about the cult known as the Witches in the area, and that this group...
the Witches.
Yeah, the Witches.
That was their name.
They're scary. And this group allegedly had planned to kidnap and kill a child to sacrifice. Another letter was from the relative of a local cop describing how the search for her body led them with those red arrows carved into trees and the dead animals, and there were animals tied to trees and glass jars.
Oh my God.
Others reported more rituals had been going on in the area, but police had covered them up, so not to tarnish the town's reputation. I'm sorry, we've had like 4 deaths in a year. Excuse me? That's what they're worried about, tarnishing the town's reputation?
Yeah, I would want to tarnish the cops' reputation because they've already done it to themselves.
Gosh. Now, all this research led them to write the book, Death on the Devil's Teeth, which is now considered to be the most comprehensive account of the case and is frequently reissued as new information does come to life. And after years of trying to obtain the official documents that were supposedly destroyed, it wasn't until 2021 that Mark and Jesse were finally able to make a breakthrough after filling multiple requests on the Jersey Open Public Records Act. Jesse and Mark finally received the case files. Most importantly, the files included crime scene photos.
Wait, all this stuff that was supposedly lost in a flood?
Yes.
Wow.
Allowing a first glimpse into the supposed occult crime scenes that were given by police and the media. Shockingly, after examining the images, it seems clear that there had never been any evidence of occult activity at the crime scene. There were no crosses, no coffin or altar found formed around her body with logs. There were no stones above her head, no signs of animal sacrifices, and there were no photos of any red arrows. There was nothing abnormal at all.
Weren't the police were the ones that reported that though, right?
Correct.
Why? Also, was her mother or any of her family members, were any of them alive at this time?
That I do not know. I
Because
have
can
no
you
idea.
imagine being like trying to get that information and they're like, we lost all of the evidence, and then they end up releasing it
Yeah, to these two
and being
guys
like,
that,
are you serious?
yeah. Well, at least these guys
Wow.
fought and fought and fought to be able
Yeah.
to
Good
get
for
this
them.
information. Yeah. Now, the only thing that closely resembles anything of a cross, or even appeared to look like it, was two decaying tree branches that had clearly fallen in the location long before she was ever killed there. The police officer's own diagram showed that there were no branches, no coffins, nothing that they had claimed were at the scene of the crime. Nothing matched what they had publicly stated, and there was nothing but that natural fallen branch. So this really raises a question of, why would the police say all this? Why would they go out of their way?
To cover up.
Yeah. The picture also shows that the statements that was made by Officer Schwartz about the area being a drug spot were also fabricated as well, because this is extremely dense, overgrowth, surrounded by large bushes, making it absolutely impossible to function as a party spot. Also in the pictures, there's no evidence of bottles or drug paraphernalia or trash, nothing like that in the pictures. Like, of course, if teens or people are partying, they usually leave their crap everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They also counted that her purse, with the missing items scattered 8 feet from her, that was all there. It is noted in there that the cross was gone. To me, maybe these items could have been taken as a trophy.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. With the more recent updates, the theories of what could have been done have also updated as well. So now we are going to finally go into some theories here. So our first theory is due to all the police cover-ups, which could point to the theory that this could have been the police chief's son,
Oh.
as he was infatuated with Jeannette.
Oh.
But she turned him down several times.
Mm.
The police chief's son also took his own life, which may indicate that he could have felt guilt or remorse if he did kill Jeannette. And that's all we really have on that theory.
I mean, that's a pretty good one. Like that.
It would make sense to this. We need to come up with a story. There were some other things that where the body was found was in a place that wasn't too far from where the police would normally have done a check or routine kind of deal. Also, there is some thought that maybe the arm was planted somewhere else and that's why the dog found it. So those are some things to think about with that. But he was never questioned. There's not anything really to go off of other than that little bit of information. Another theory is that it could have been the minister's son, as he had broken up with Jeannette 2 weeks before the murder. And perhaps...
Oh. What's up with all these guys' sons in this town?
I know, everyone's dating Jeannette over here. She was really pretty.
Yeah, I looked up a picture.
She's really pretty. Now, this could be why his father put on such a heavy need to insert himself into this crime by repeatedly saying it was the occult. He does play a very big factor in this hysteria and just pushing all the clues, like everybody focus on this.
Yeah. Well, and both that reverend and the cops, they both have a lot of authority in that town.
Yeah.
Especially at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like whatever they say is what the public's going to go with.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Either of those theories make a lot of sense.
Those do. Now, this one, I'll tell you and we'll see what you say.
Okay.
Then there is a theory that it could have been a notorious serial killer of the time. Richard Cunningham was the New Jersey resident and serial killer that targeted young girls and women. He would later be known as the torso killer. He was also known for torturing and assaulting his victims before dumping their bodies into wooden areas. He confessed to killing somewhere between 85 to 100 women.
What?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's real. Like, because there are some serial killers who are like, oh, I killed 1,000.
Yeah.
Because they want
The
to
fame.
have that number.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that's true. Or, I mean, it honestly could be true. Especially if he's in that area, considering this police department.
Yeah, let's look at that group of the police department, the coroner over there. And they're like, yeah, strangulation.
I bet these guys were probably really proud of the work that was done on the Gainesville Ripper case.
They probably were like, wow, way to go with that screwdriver team. Get them.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, with that number, it is hard to believe what a serial killer says. I do find it sus when they give less of an account. To me, that seems like they're covering up more of what they could do. But whenever they're shooting out these large numbers, it makes you go, But in 2021, he reached out to Jesse and Mark of Weird, New Jersey and suggested he may have been involved. He claimed he could have picked Jeannette up hitchhiking. He is also known for having killed other similar age girls in the area who he picked up hitchhiking. Now, typically his victims are violently murdered, and Jeannette, however, did not show the same pattern. But like I said before, we aren't clear about how the arm became detached, as the dog who found it was also a smaller breed, and the area around the body did not show any evidence that the dog had a struggle to remove it. I remember also, how did this dog get down there and get back up? People were having trouble getting down there and getting back up.
Okay, so this killer, thinks he could have been the killer.
Yeah.
But he's done this so many times that he's like,
I don't know
which one's which. But it doesn't seem to fit his normal technique.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, but except maybe the cutting off the arm part, perhaps.
Correct, yeah. Because
in which case,
it could be.
Maybe it was like I don't know. But see, the thing about it is that area, if it's such a thick terrain or like a difficult terrain, I feel like he would have remembered bringing her body there.
Well, he was known for ditching bodies in hidden spots in the woods.
So maybe he just kind of maybe he didn't know what spots he was using.
Perhaps. And I mean, he also didn't make these statements till 2021. It's been a long time since the 70s by that point.
Yeah.
So, well, again, and with this case, we don't have a lot of theories. These are going to be the new updated theories, that add into this. As of today, the Springfield Police Department continues to remain silent about the case. Still, there has been some push for this case to reopen and for her body and clothes to be resumed, to be reinvestigated and using some modern testing. But as of now, nothing more has been done to conclude or to even identify who could have committed this crime. It's really sitting in limbo. It's a cold case. We do have these two journalists that are continuously updating this information and giving us more information as they find it. It's something that it does have the possibility to be solved. I think if they do bring out that old evidence and retest everything with modern technology, we possibly could be able to find some sort of traces of DNA. We could test what was the blood and maybe semen that they thought were on the clothing that the technology in the 70s couldn't detect or pick up. I do feel like this case, although there's so many holes and it's all over the place, I feel like it could have a possibility to be solved one day.
Yeah. Who do you think did it?
I really do kind of lean towards the serial killer. Reason being, you also had Joan that went missing and then was found dead.
Yeah.
What if it was him? He was killing women in the area. When you look at some of his victims, they do look similar to how Joan and Jeannette. And I mean, Joan and Jeannette didn't look that unsimilar. They did look pretty much the same.
Well, and then we got the guy that gave the ride to Joan.
Yeah, but we don't know where she was dropped off. We only see her being picked up by him. So he could have dropped her off somewhere and this other guy could have scooped her up.
Yeah. Well, then we got Red.
I don't know about Red, though, other than crazy hippie in the woods. Maybe he got scared because they were questioning him and he took off.
Yeah, he could have fled and been like, they're going to keep coming for me. I just got to get out of here.
Yeah, with all this hysteria, the next thing they're going to say is I'm a witch and because I live out in these woods.
Lives in the woods, yeah. I don't know. There is something odd, I think, about the guy who picked up Joan. I don't know. I think there might be something with him. Maybe he killed someone else
Maybe.
and I'm just like feeling it.
You've got a
Otherwise,
hunch.
I think I'm leaning towards either the Reverend's son or the cop's son.
The cop does make a lot more sense just because they're the first ones at the scene of the crime. And they
Yeah.
were the first ones to start making cover-ups.
Yeah, they were the ones that made up the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
The Reverend just ran with it. And maybe they were like,
ran.
"Hey, Reverend, you
Run.
want like they could have like fed that information to him and the Reverend could have been like, "Okay." And the Reverend's probably making money off of it with church donations. He's probably funneling that collection
straight into his back pocket.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I think maybe both are involved, and it was the cop's son. That's where I'm going with it.
I mean, it is hard not to lean towards the cops. They even lied about the initial phone call of when she went missing and did not want to go look for her.
Oh, yeah. And they weren't like, oh, she's missing. It was a runaway.
Mm-hmm.
It's the cops.
They even stated that the coroner they were using were crap. They were like, Edmundberg over there. They didn't put any initiative into, let's make sure we get a new coroner or maybe take her a town over. Let's have this really investigated. It was like, we know he botches up shit, so just send her over there.
It was like strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you guys think. Who do you think could be behind this murder?
Yes, definitely. Drop us a comment. Definitely subscribe on whatever you're listening to us on.
Literally whatever.
Literally whatever.
Well, thank you for delivering that case to me. I'm actually kind of surprised I don't know it.
Well, you're welcome. I hope it's as good as what you've been delivering lately. I tried. Well, I guess with that, we'll say
good night
and pleasant nightmares.
Bye.
Bye.